Good morning, class. Happy Tuesday. It's April 21. Today we're going to talk about differences between Federalists and Anti-Federalists, a little bit more about the final details for how the Constitution came to be. Our agenda is first there's a review quiz I'd like you to do. This is not graded. It is just for review and practice. After that, we'll go through some notes, so make sure you're ready for that, about kind of the Federalist point of view versus the Anti-Federalist point of view and how compromises were made. And then your assignment for today, 3 p.m., is to summarize the first half of the Bill of Rights in your own words. Also, this is for future reference. Next week, Monday, you will be having a quiz on the Constitution. That will be a quiz grade. It's an actual quiz, not a practice review or classwork grade quiz. And I will provide more information for that later this week. So first, if you go to Google Classroom, you will find where it says, if you go to our stream here, where it says the Constitution Review Materials. You've got a Quizlet, which I'll be adding to later this week. You've got a Kahoot review. You've got the Prezi we went through earlier. This is the quiz. The quiz is one that I would like you to take. That is not graded. It's just for practice review. I'm trying to add as many review things as I can just to help people stay on top of what we have learned. So please take your time to go through that review quiz. So for some notes, we are talking about the final steps in creating the Constitution and the two main perspectives that emerge afterwards. So one compromise will be between the Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. So the Virginia Plan was created by the father of the Constitution, James Madison. His plan, he is from Virginia, hence the name, is to create 3 branches of government instead of 1, not just a legislative, but an executive and judicial branch too. So government split up into 3 different parts. Instead of the legislative branch just having 1 house, it would be bicameral. Bicameral means 2 houses. So there would be a House of Representatives and a Senate. This would be based on population. So the more people that belonged and were a part of your state, the more representatives you would have in the legislative branch, which means the more power and the more votes you have to make laws. So representation is not equal. That's a change from the Articles of Confederation. It is determined based on a state's population, where larger states have more delegates and representatives than smaller ones do. The concern with this plan is for smaller states. They feared that the big states would be dominant and they wouldn't have enough power for their voices to be heard, and it would just be big state domination. Also, they were concerned that by expanding this national government into multiple branches, you would be giving it too much national power. They were concerned that states' rights would be compromised as a result. So this is his proposal. This isn't passed. This is his proposal for how to rearrange the government in the U.S. Constitution, James Madison, the Virginia Plan. Conversely, the opposite plan was known as the New Jersey Plan. William Paterson of New Jersey proposes this plan. Just like James Madison, he wants 3 branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. However, the legislative branch will be unicameral, only 1 house, and we will just call it Congress. So it's not the House of Representatives and the Senate. Instead, there's just 1 house in the legislative branch. That is called Congress. Also different than the Virginia Plan is it will be equal representation. Regardless of population, every state will get 1 vote. That's what it was like under the Articles of Confederation. It's equal representation, not proportional based on population. Concern with this, is it fair that a state like Virginia has the same amount of power as a state like Rhode Island when there's way, way, way more people in Virginia than there is Rhode Island? Okay, is that fair? Is that not? That's the concern. So what happens is 2 compromises get made. One is between the Virginia-New Jersey plan. The other one is about a different issue that we brought up in yesterday's video. These compromises, first, the Great Compromise. This is proposed by Roger Sherman of Connecticut He proposes and compromises a bicameral two-house legislature where the House of Representatives is based on population. The more people, the more representatives. And the Senate is equal, where each state gets 2 senators regardless of their population. So he splits the difference. That's what compromises are about, where part of it is equal and part of it is based on population. Try to make both big and little states happy. The other compromise that gets made at this convention, we're still at the Constitutional Convention here, is a 3/5 compromise. This is a compromise not between big and little states, but between southern and northern states. Southern states thought that the slaves should count for population. Reason why is because southern states had more slaves. More slaves means more population. More population means more people in the House of Representatives for those states. The northern states thought they shouldn't count, right? If they can't vote, if they're not really seen as humans, why should they count as part of population? Also, it would avoid southern states getting more votes in the House and make things more level. Now realize just the fact that we're having this conversation today makes absolutely no sense. Right? One, the idea of slavery. Two, the fact that any human being, regardless of their race, their gender, whatever, that wouldn't be counted as a person is ridiculous today. We are talking about 1787, back before slavery was abolished. The compromise is that each slave would count as 3/5 of a person towards a state's population. Please realize I am not saying that slaves count for 3/5 of a vote. Slaves count for 0 of a vote. They cannot vote. Slaves only count as 3/5 when you're determining how many people live in that state, which determines their representation in the House of Representatives. 3/5 is the compromise. So once these two compromises are made, the task is then to bring this plan of government, the U.S. Constitution, to each state and to see whether or not they will ratify it and accept it to replace the Articles of Confederation. Now realize the people in the United States had no idea what this was going on. These meetings at the convention were private. Everyone was clueless. So what happens is there's going to be a debate, people who are Federalists versus people who are known as anti-Federalists. If you are a Federalist, you support the Constitution. One example of this would be John Jay. By the way, we will go through that worksheet. I will review that in a video either tomorrow or Thursday, depending on how many people turn it in by 10 a.m. tomorrow. The reason why they supported the Constitution was because they strongly believed that individual states were not strong enough to protect themselves. Shays' Rebellion was the example, the fact that states weren't strong enough. Second, this $40 million of debt that the country is currently in, which is a lot of money for back then. Expanding the government, giving the national government the power to tax will help pay off debt. And taxing power was a part of the Constitution, and it wasn't a part of the Articles of Confederation. The fear is that people's liberties and freedoms would be lost by increasing national government power. So Federalists argued that liberties would be preserved, protected, through compromise. Anti-Federalists are on the opposite side of things. They oppose the Constitution. People like Elbridge Gerry. They believed that this new plan of government gave too much power and would take away people's liberties, their freedoms, and their rights. That there's no way this strong of a national government could appropriately represent the local interests around the country. Realize, you give the national government this much power, they're responsible to think about what does Massachusetts need, what does Georgia need, what does North Carolina need, and instead, the states should have more power because the states know their people better than a national government does. Also, as part of this plan created by the Constitutional Convention, there's this idea of a necessary and proper clause. This phrase, necessary and proper, was in the Constitution, and people were concerned that the national government would take this idea that whatever is necessary and proper needs to be done. And the government would twist this and become tyrannical. It would be abusive, once again giving them too much power. This final compromise is going to be something called the Bill of Rights. They add 10 amendments to the Constitution known as the Bill of Rights. This helps the Federalists and Anti-Federalists to get on the same page, so that way in the end the Constitution does get ratified and it replaces the Articles of Confederation, giving a stronger national government while using these compromises and this Bill of Rights to make sure that people's rights are protected too. So we're going to kind of segue into this idea of what the Bill of Rights is all about. We'll talk more about the structure of the Constitution tomorrow. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. For tomorrow, there's going to be a Google Doc I'll show you in a second. You only need to summarize the first 5 amendments. Do not do all 10 yet, only the first 5. When you summarize them, use your own words to do so, because you are going to use this document later as part of your test, and for those of you who are not seniors, your exam as well. So if we go to Google Classroom, this will get posted for you. I have put the first 10 amendments in their original wording here. You are only going to summarize 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 using your own words. The reason I'm asking you to do this is because if you can fully explain these amendments in your own words, that's a good sign that you actually understand what each amendment is talking about. And you're going to have to apply these amendments to various scenarios and situations for a test and an exam later. And we will practice that before you take that test. So let me know if you have questions. Only do the first 5. Don't forget the review quiz that is posted on this post right here. And I will talk to you more tomorrow.